Base versus GaRpY is in our immediate future. It's our next series here of the day here for our latest edition of Quake Pro League. My name's Ketchup, joined by Flea, and this is our final matchup before we start our featured matchups, where, I mean, this is already a heavy hitter anyway, because it's Base and GaRpY going head-to-head. What more could you want? And then afterwards, things get even juicier still. So GaRpY always been a very kind of like, heart on the sleeve player, not afraid to make those kind of big decisions. But it just tends to come from that real kind of old school nature of him, I suppose. Like, you see a lot of that in his gameplay, whereas Base, multi-layered, but almost never takes a major risk if it's not like, this will give me a massive reward. So I'm excited to see these two styles clash.
Indeed, a very different set of playstyles going into this. Base, much more reserved, tends to be disciplined, reactive, very defensive player, whereas GaRpY, much more aggressive. He's a brawler at heart, and he puts that into his game as well. Now, last time these two played each other was back in previous stage, and it was a clean 3-0 victory for Base. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not GaRpY can turn that around. So far, he hasn't had the greatest of stages yet, has lost all of his matches, managed to secure one map against Cooler, but that's about it. Whereas on the other hand, Base has won all of his matches and only lost one map to Sparty. So polar opposites. If GaRpY can come out swinging, this is a good opportunity for him to get some of those much needed points, because he is still in the danger zone right now.
Let's take a look at the picks and bans, and we'll find out any extra information. Exile will begin. Ooh, battle of absolute big bodies, as it'll be Scalebearer and Sorlag. Veil, I mean, this is just a repeat of what we've just seen, basically map-wise, but BJ versus Galena, and then Ruins of Sarnath. Wait a minute, what's going on? These are the same maps as our last series.
Pretty much an exact repeat, yeah. We're getting Scale versus Sorlag instead of Keel versus Sorlag. Then Veil of Nav, very different though. We've got the BJ versus Galena, and then finally Ruins, Ranger versus Strock. So again, the heavies dominate Exile. Nothing new there. We've kind of grown accustomed to that. And then Veil of Nav once more, right? We know that GaRpY likes playing with Galena. Very strong, powerful champion on this map. Plenty of places where you can set up a bit of a fortress with those totems. And then on the other hand, Base, with the dual wield, is able to deliver that instant damage. And then finally, on Ruins of Sarnath, we see Base running Strock. So he's got that constant mobility, the continuous speed and acceleration that comes with the crouch sliding, whereas GaRpY has got the Orb. Orb, both really powerful at dealing burst damage, but also that tool to get around the map easily. So relatively balanced picks, in my opinion. Don't really see either player dominate in the pick ban phase.
Another chance before we jump into our first map to discuss the predictions. I would venture a guess and assume that the people favor Base in this matchup, and I think it's a rather educated assumption to think that Base would have the advantage. Me, as a biased British man, would love to see GaRpY do well. Not just because of that, obviously GaRpY's a great guy. He's a great laugh and he's fun to be around and stuff, but I just think that when you look at recent matchups and you look at Base, especially with how he is one of the most consistent players I think you can possibly see in Quake Champions, it's very hard to bet against Base. Dare I even say 3-0, as much as it pains me to say. I love GaRpY to bits, but I just think the odds favor Base today.
I'm inclined to agree. This is going to be an incredibly difficult matchup for GaRpY. Like I said, champion picks and maps really aren't stacked against him, but he is up against Base. And one of the things that I am worried about is that if GaRpY plays that standard brawl style of his and he just throws himself at his opponent, what if it doesn't work out? What if Base gets just 2-3 frags up on him? Then what? Then he has got to chase down the Sorlag, at least on map 1, and then on map 3 it will be a Strock. So I'm worried about GaRpY giving up a few frags in the opening moments of the game.
And on a map like Exile, that opening moment can be critical for the rest of it. If you get... We've seen, it's almost pointless me even talking about it because we've literally seen it today. The amount of situations where you can get fragged once and then a ring out happens and then you're totally out of control. Heavies being as prominent as they clearly are in the meta of Exile. It's so hard to come back from that because then you've got loads of stack, you're cycling the entire map, you're picking up everything. You're fighting with really the scraps that you have left, but I just think with where the weapons are located, it can be really tricky to take a fight off spawn if they've got every weapon and you don't. I've said this before, and I think we could even see it again. But Base versus GaRpY, I talked about a clash of style. I don't know if this first map will allow that to be as apparent, though. We'll see.
Kicking it off on the perspective of Base this time around. Going immediately for the railgun. One of the most powerful weapons on this map, as we've seen time and time again. Unable to get anything else, though. The rail is all he needs. GaRpY's even going to take that fight. That's the aggression we were talking about. But Base easily avoids that and now has a bit of a stack advantage to work with.
Yeah, it was extremely unlikely that bull rush was going to accomplish much. There's just too much distance, too many ways for him to escape. If at least GaRpY is able to take this Mega rather safely, and the first stage of it definitely better than nothing. Yo, 100 damage on the rocket. We haven't even talked about GaRpY's rockets today, but he's always had some of the best in the business. Need I remind everyone of that corrupted keep rocket he got last week? Ugh.
Base taking a moment right there to himself. Not quite sure what he was doing, but still seems to be with us. Yeah, GaRpY. The rockets, just as you were saying. Knocking his opponent off the item, stealing it himself. This is risky.
Oh, baby.
Wow. That was pretty uncharacteristic for Base, I feel like. Pushing through like that with just the nail gun just before Mega's about to spawn, that's a dangerous pick, and GaRpY definitely landed the damage with the long distance rockets, secured himself yet another frag.
Loving that placement from Base. I actually love that fight that he took there. He knows that GaRpY is going to pepper the rockets down in heavy, and I think using that knowledge against him, Base thinking, I have no intention of going anywhere near heavy right now, but I do know that if you pepper rockets down there, I'm just going to get all this free LG and take no damage. That was so smart.
Really good read from Base to finish it off as well. Just predicting exactly what GaRpY is going to do and holding the angle down towards Railgun. Because he knew that GaRpY wanted the health, the armor that he might be able to secure down there, and just cut that off instantly. Oh, okay. The meltdown, and that was from a fair distance away as well. GaRpY, hyper aggressive. Bull rush, calm down.
Was
there.
I think one of the biggest go to hell moments I think I've ever seen. Base knowing that that speed he was working with was fast enough to absolutely compete with the bull rush, and then stopping him on Mega. That was such a sit down, kid.
I mean, he just knew that there was no way that GaRpY could beat him to the Mega and jump straight across while bull rushing, and so he just, you know, air dodged onto it, and then GaRpY fell just short of the item, and yeah, rest was history.
And the biggest drop down into the ring out that could possibly be taken. The Fall of Shame.
Yes, all the way from the top. Base now with a 1 frag lead. GaRpY's very early on heavy. Still 5 seconds, but Base is actually just going to let him have it. Was expecting the Russian player to make more of a move there.
Again,
nope.
Hits the bull rush, very nearly falls off the map though in doing so, and he does a fantastic amount of damage in the meantime. Looks to turn around. I mean, thanks to the map, only able to get 8 damage from that super shotgun blast. Dude, these angles, GaRpY is not prepared for these immediate angles. Base! Railing them all here, there, and everywhere.
That was extremely unlike the Base that we're used to seeing. Base was outstacked by GaRpY that entire time. Ketchup, he had like 50 points of stack total, and he just chased down GaRpY, who had picked up Mega moments before with the super shotgun. I think GaRpY was just expecting Base to turn around at any moment, like, you're not gonna keep chasing me, you're not gonna keep following, and Base was just on his tail up until the very end. And GaRpY indeed just not ready for the angles like you said. Again, several seconds early before heavy, not able to get it.
When you've bull rushed 5 seconds too early on heavy, I think this is where things can start to set in. As GaRpY in this position, mistiming these items out of control, the more frags you concede, the moment you kind of get mentally rattled in any way, and then you haven't got item timing, I think you kind of run the risk of losing timing completely, because that kind of lapse in judgment or concentration is, wait, hang on a minute, what was the number? Like, you kind of lose your focus a little bit, and GaRpY has been known to not exactly have the most consistent item timings in the world.
GaRpY did get a frag, but he's still trailing by 4 kills. He's got the better position to pick up Mega though, but can't stay alive long enough to make it his own. And now Base has got a pretty neat cycle going on here. Mega right before the small armor, and then he heads straight onto Heavy. And that allows him to take these bad fights. Oh, GaRpY peeking, why?
Because I think with the rocket out, he was not expecting the backup. Now that's an air of good luck, a moment of fortune. Able to spawn and immediately pick up that Heavy, but yeah, the fact that on GaRpY's side, he had that rocket out, he must have expected him to chase it down. And just not the peak, you know?
Base caught a glimpse of GaRpY's head right there. Couldn't nail the shot though. 5 frags, 4 minutes. Very much possible. Oh! Base! Completely taken by surprise. I was really expecting GaRpY to just knock him clean off the edge right there, but Base did react just on time, was unable to avoid the damage.
If Base didn't turn around when he did, he absolutely would have got knocked off the map. That would have been one of the most ridiculous bull rushes we could have ever seen. But the items going into the favor of GaRpY. I think Base using that speed, the in and out nature. We need to get weapons first. He's concentrating on that. As GaRpY has this stack, the LG is really nice. Only one of them has armor. Again, GaRpY there a bit early on Heavy, but with Base backing off, there's not really much you can do to stop it from being picked up. However, Base keeps that impressive frag lead. And even now, he is railable. GaRpY looking for it, and he lands it. That was just a perfect rail placement. You hover it over the light, you know he's going to take it, and just get it before he takes it.
Oh! Okay, it's a trade.
Base gets a good spawn. Yeah, he gets the rocket. The rockets will continue, but only one of them has an LG.
Still, that was a lot of damage from GaRpY. If he had missed or done slightly less damage there, Base would have just absolutely stonewalled him. But now we're getting a fight before the next major item, but GaRpY just sticking with the rockets, and it just wasn't working out for him. He did essentially 0 damage in that fight, whereas Base was much more consistent with the LG.
A nice little bit of bonus LG as he comes through the teleporter, but the problem is that Base, piece by piece, he's conceding a couple of frags here and there, but he's always able to get one. And with the nature of how this map is going, that one little frag that he gets every couple of times will be more than enough to keep this lead. Lovely little knock up and a light to pick up in between as the Mega is free for GaRpY. But not a lot of weaponry. And that's what he's going to have to keep in mind here. The LG fight, it's all he's got and he cannot win it. Base gets the frag. But this is what I mean. You have 2 minutes left and Base is always able to kind of get the odd frag now with the lead he's working on. It's enough to keep the lead, you know, to keep GaRpY sweating.
And that's everything, or all, that Base has to do now. GaRpY should get another frag. 4 kills, it is doable. But Base is a very strategic player. We know how defensive he can be, and he's got that acid spit at the ready as well. So even if GaRpY finds him, Base can pretty much guarantee a whole lot of counter damage coming out.
But we can see the instant shift in gear. GaRpY has to make this comeback and he needs to be the one that chases. Base, more than aware of that, and is content to just listen out for the items, listen out for where Scalebearer is going to be. I mean, he's not exactly a quiet champion. And now I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to play Runaway or Hide and Seek for the remaining 60 seconds.
1 minute warning.
GaRpY is gonna find him, will flanner him while he's at it. Now Heavy's gonna spawn. GaRpY is going to be able to secure it.
Hang on a minute, if he finds him.
Yeah, this is possible. He should have heard the drop down.
Lovely rail. Hang on a minute, Flea. GaRpY. Can he find him in time? Sorlag is going to have a little bit of speed, but it's not even the speed as much as it is just how tricky you can be on defense. The big push. GaRpY, he can't afford to take the damage here, and he can't afford to concede the frag. A done deal. No comeback possible anymore, my friends.
The rockets just, they needed to be perfect, and they absolutely weren't. A few missed shots at the start, and then Base on the drop down finding the final bit of damage that he needs. Now, if you look at the overall damage for the series, Base also convincingly out-damaging his opponent. 6,000 damage by Base versus 4.7k by GaRpY. I think that more or less says it all. Exile is the kind of map where just damage output matters so much because it can be extremely tricky to get items, right, if you're out of control. So Base, scoreline's pretty close, but he had a pretty solid grip on the map for most of this.
But GaRpY able to keep things competitive at the very least. I did like his, I think, tenacity, being able to just stick to him, putting forward that scale bearer to perfect use. But Base, being able to make his presence known every time, and that's always a huge part of why he plays as well as he can, is that, oh no, that was the moment. That was my favorite frag of the map, I think. But like I was saying, is that Base will let you take an item sometimes, but I don't think he often likes you taking it for free. If he can get a rail first, if he can just get any kind of damage, it's like you've picked it up, there's always a cost. And that might daisy chain into being just one extra frag that you can get when you're already having to make a comeback. And then at that point, you know, the stress piles on, you run out of time, you start having to be more predictable because you haven't got time to be careful anymore. And it's the defensive plays. You know, Base can be aggressive. He is a multi-layered player at this point, but when the time comes to be a defensive powerhouse, he is arguably the best in the world at doing that.
Now map 2 might be something else entirely. This will be Veil of Naf. Much smaller map, even though Exile isn't really that big of its own, but Veil, very vertical, but not very large. Not that many places to hide, right? The number one place that you go to when you're trying to playing defensively is, of course, over at the railgun site, and Base is extremely aware of that as well. So this is going to be much more difficult to play a defensive game, especially when you're going up against GaRpY with the Galena.
And as we now start things off, maintaining that high ground, something that hopefully GaRpY is going to be able to do here. The totems are so good for it too. On a map like this, where there's quite a lot of like resources to soak up, it can be similar to a Corrupted Keep in that respect.
Yeah.
The existence of the totems. But if we're talking about Galena, you know, Base is pretty fantastic with this champion as well. So he's going to be likely checking every corner he can. At the moment you don't check those totems, it's a pretty miserable experience, and then BJ with the extra damage. Can't go wrong, really. And a map as combat heavy as this one, Base still looking good. But this is the kind of map that is always like, GaRpY could take this. Absolutely, he could take this. This is a map that complements all of his strengths, especially with him being as combat heavy as he is.
Champion pick-wise, for these two specific players, I would indeed favor GaRpY, right? I think that Galena is going to help him out more than BJ with the dual wield might help Base. However, of course, there's much more that goes into just the champion alone. Very curious to see how GaRpY is going to approach this. Is he going to try and hide totems toward the bottom area of the map to get them all up for that instant mega? Or is he going to keep them available for mid-fight? Now look at how Base is playing this. Oh my goodness, GaRpY immediately in a bad spot.
We saw a start very similar indeed, Razy versus CNZ just today. Really depending on the start, if you're aggressive enough, the opponent, if they want to take certain items, it slows them down. GaRpY taking that light armor meant he couldn't take anything else. It's almost like, I hope it was worth it, but I just don't think he factored in that start being something that Base was going to do. And he drops down. GaRpY, Tribal doesn't finish him off. Hang on a minute, he's still alive. The fact that in that giant push, he didn't go down straight away, and he gets the first frag. Are you kidding me?
How did that even happen? Base had such a dominant opening.
GaRpY. This is why he's one of my favorite players, because against all odds, he's able to pull off frags like that. Like, come on now.
That definitely felt like it should have been Base's kill. That it will be the British Bulldog holding his own, setting up a bit of a trap. Base, oh, a little bit careless, going through the teleporter, looking the wrong way upon the exit. And there comes that totem to help out a bit. Base, he doesn't have anything to work with. He knows he's just lost out on heavy. He doesn't have the stack or the weapons to make a move on Mega either, so he's relegated to that bottom area of the map once again.
And even then, he's having to eye up this LG flea. Like, he wants this LG, but GaRpY's right near it. Can he steal it away?
GaRpY's looking the wrong way, though. Oh! That was so messy. And Base fights the vertical rail from above.
My favorite thing about that fight, watching it from Base's point of view, was that he absolutely waited as close as he could to then make it so taking LG and firing the rocket was instantaneous, so you haven't got time to react. What a surprise that was. GaRpY. I mean, surprise, bro.
Yeah, GaRpY was just really expecting base to, I think, come from the top level. Little staircase with the heavy nail gun. But nope. Base just slowly edged his way around to the LG. I think it was just such a risky angle of approach that GaRpY figured that base wouldn't go for it. Now, juicy rocket to open things up. GaRpY definitely has a stack to make a push for it. Bullies his opponent straight and clean out of the room. And that's gonna tell him where his opponent is at right now. More than just damage, that's information. And base does a decent amount of rocket damage, but it's insufficient to take GaRpY down.
Wonderful totem placement by GaRpY, placing it in such a way that by taking the light armor, you get hit by the totem, which kind of nullifies the light armor that you just collected and gives information. It's a nice little placement right there. With it, only one frag separating the two players. Base only needs one more to make it even Stevens. 3 minutes. I mean, there's plenty of this map left to go. And Base, really the one that's moving around the majority of this map. GaRpY's the one that's been playing nice and defensive. And the totem has been pretty key to that, but a lot of caution here from GaRpY. Oh my! What is going on today, Flea? How are these two players surprising each other like this?
Top 10 play right there. That was not an easy rocket to hit, even with base not being aware of where GaRpY was coming from. Rocket into rail. GaRpY clearly demonstrating his prowess with that weapon. I like how base just pushed into the room and then immediately left again, because he was expecting GaRpY to just make a push, and he was like, I don't want any part of that. Oh, another surprise. GaRpY looking up towards the heavens, and base just quickly going through the teleporter right back down. Nah, this should be the end for who? For GaRpY, yeah. Base still cleans it up, but a lot messier than expected.
This has just been an all-out brawl now. We were talking about the patience and how GaRpY was sitting pretty, waiting for his moment to make something happen, and not so much now. We are just swinging. Rockets and rails in hand. Another drop down, but without weapons to make anything happen. GaRpY, yeah, there's no doubt he has to back off. He only had a rocket launcher down there, and there's only so much you can do when they've got LG to pepper down. Base sitting pretty with all of the weapons. Actually,
this is like
checking things out from GaRpY here, Flea. He was patient once again. He's being so quiet.
This is like a very cyclical map, right? It starts very slowly, and then there's this burst of aggression. We see a few frags, and then it goes right back to more slow-paced for another minute or two, and now we're once again rush after rush after rush. It's just cyclical.
And I think that's happening right now, because it's rush after rush after rush! And now we're going to go back to being patient in a minute, I guess.
Yeah, I think base realizes that this isn't going to work. He knows that he had a shot, right? Kill GaRpY before Mega spawns, and you might be able to turn it all around, but he didn't. He even lost a frag, and now he knows that he no longer is in any position for these brazen charges and has to play a bit more passively once more.
GaRpY toppled himself back up to healthy thanks to a totem. The next play being made on Mega, one of which base is in position for. But with that small burst of spawn frags now, base giving himself considerably more work to do. Oh, that rocket was so close to being a direct. And that rail narrowly missing its mark. GaRpY getting away. But it will be base in position for heavy. And he picks it up unchallenged. GaRpY playing this slow game. Looks like you're right, Flea. I wonder if we're going to see more of the aggression again.
This is just a passive cycle, GaRpY. It'll repeat. We'll get back to it. GaRpY, majorly outstacked right now, but he's not in a bad position, right? He's always keeping his exit routes open, and he's playing this in such a way that he's always got a pretty good idea of where base might be coming from, and an instant way of getting out of harm's way. And these defensive rockets, they are on point. But 10 seconds before Mega spawns, GaRpY's got to be so careful not to take too much damage. Now, no! The mid-air rocket. GaRpY. I don't know about that one.
Kind of looking to me like aggression right now. GaRpY retreats off, but there's only one place he can go. Looking for the rail. Oh, GaRpY dropping down. Base with the perfect angle. I mean, he had that angle set up 5 seconds before he went there. Calculated.
GaRpY really isn't in a situation where he can slow it down until the end. Especially now, Base should be able to tie it up here.
Somehow
Actually,
not, though. GaRpY able to survive.
That rocket just saved GaRpY's life. That 100 direct to the face made Base think twice, because at that point the Russian player realizes, hang on, what if I peek now and he gets the same kind of rocket again? Then I'm done for, and all of a sudden I'm 2 frags behind. He's gonna pick up the next major item and I'm in trouble. So Base just playing it safely, realizing that he can get a better engagement elsewhere, but this is not it!
Reminiscent of Exile, but the tables have turned, where Base had the rail out because he absolutely believed that GaRpY would have tried to escape. GaRpY's still right there, a complete opposite of what happened to GaRpY on Exile. But I just want to point out, by the way, at this stage, 2.3 thousand damage has been dealt with GaRpY's rocket launcher. It has been his star weapon on this map. You know, I said before this map began that this is a map that complements a lot of GaRpY's greatest strengths, and I think this is why. But he's not out of the woods. He's in the lead now, but minor lovely tri-bolt, though.
Base, he'll be the one to pick up Mega. Oh, this is dangerous for GaRpY. He doesn't have a lot of escape routes here. I was expecting him to go through the teleporter back to Railgun, but stuck around. And that is helping Base out significantly. Now it's a 1-frag game with 1 minute to go. All the pressure is on Base right now. And GaRpY just caught out with nothing but the machine gun and the rail. I like what he was going for with the peak, but he was just a little too late. And by that point, Base had already basically closed the distance.
A worrying spawn as well. GaRpY at that point only had an LG. And now still only has one. And doesn't have a lot of cells left either. We have to get in and out, but the combat, the fight, it can't start here. If it does for GaRpY, he is horrifically out of means to fight back. He hasn't even been able to justify getting a shotgun yet. Like, he's only just picked up the SSG. And now GaRpY has got some of the weapons. Still no rail, but I think he's currently working on it. We're going to be going into sudden death, and GaRpY will be having to set this up. An aggressive push, the double weapons, Base. Can he make this count? And he gets the damage he's after. 10 left to go. This, by all means, should be a map for Base. And with that drop down of GaRpY seals the fate. If GaRpY just went into that room, maybe. But he's a second short.
Oh, that was so tight. Still, GaRpY with the rocket jump straight up. Base lifts with 22 points of health. One more shotgun shot would have sealed the deal and it would have gone into overtime. But Base, surprisingly aggressive right there. He had
final
a
moment.
Slight advantage, and he just went for it, knowing that he had the dual wield at the ready and had a good read on where GaRpY was at.
And when that happened, Flea, I was watching that through GaRpY's point of view. He spawns, he's near heavy. Base is normally where power-up spawns.
Right.
And he's kind of sitting there and listening out. GaRpY just makes the call to drop down instead. You know, there's a situation where he's got not much information, a lot of potential places Base could be, and he just goes the one way Base isn't. I think it was just a really unfortunate path to take. But given the fact that he was still so close to making that happen, it kind of makes you feel a little bit worse. But
yeah,
GaRpY, no choice but to recover. So close again. The tale continues. And when you say it's hard to count out GaRpY, this is why. Because he makes it so close on maps like this. And his rocket was, without question, the star performer. But it's Ruins of Sarnath as the final location. And I gotta say, GaRpY rocking the classic Ranger skin with the eggshell head. I've never seen that combination before, and it looks really, really weird.
Interesting fashion, to say the least. Now, I am worried for GaRpY when it comes to this map. Out of the 3 maps we've seen, I feel like this is the one that favors base the most. Especially when we consider how important rockets have been for GaRpY so far. Ruins of Sarnath is a map that it does have, of course, quite a few corridors and small tight areas where rockets are really powerful, but so much of the map is more spread out. It's more out in the open, where Railgun and LG dominate the fight. And I haven't really seen GaRpY make the most out of those weapons yet, so if he relies too much on the rockets, while base is constantly outmaneuvering him by playing Strog, GaRpY could really be in trouble here.
The mobility will factor in a massive amount. We know that base is a positional player. A rail on a map like this is going to be pivotal as well. And if he's able to just cycle from point A to point B, and he's always able to make sure that when GaRpY goes somewhere, there's a rail angle set up, I think this is going to be a tricky map for GaRpY. GaRpY's not going to be able to put his combat to perfect use. He's likely to have to play base's game. That's the way he likes it. Base will play around these items, no doubt. The swarm-up's coming to a close, but this is not the map I would have predicted he'd be able to win against base. I think Vale was his best bet, and although it was close, couldn't quite pull it off. I wouldn't like to see a 3-0. Like I said, biased British man and all that, but you know what? I think that there's a good chance of it now. This map is base's map to win.
Indeed, and if I'm looking at the predictions, they're also heavily favoring base once more. Still, GaRpY, he's a resilient player. He's a fighter. He's not going to just take it lying down. He's going to get right back to his feet and rise to the challenge. There's very little delay between the items. Heavy spawning first, but it doesn't seem like either player is really that interested in it. Again, the surprise catch-up. How often is this going to happen? Or these players find themselves within a meter or two away from each other and just don't have a clue that the other one's there up until the rockets start flying. Solid LG by base as well right there. 47% LG so far. Not bad at all. GaRpY, 68% LG. Even better, truly exceptional even, but just didn't have the stack to work with.
He's able to keep the LG nice and prime. GaRpY not particularly sure that orb there was intentional or meant to go to plan. The rail angle set up, but actually GaRpY lands the shot and he gets the second one. Okay, that's a perfect time because now he's healthy. And he can push forward with this LG. The starting shotguns all base has to work with, and GaRpY will punish, securing a second frag here. And a back and forth to begin. GaRpY, he's just such a brawler, isn't he?
Base, hyper protective of the Mega right there. He knew that he doesn't have LG, he doesn't have a rail, so he can't really take that many fights. So rather than put himself in a bad position out in the open, he will just sit on Mega like an egg waiting to hatch and just trying to deny base entry, or rather GaRpY entry into the room. Rockets were solid once more, and the lead flips in the Russian player's favor.
Setting up just a little bit of extra denial in case he goes through that teleporter. The main goal here being the items, of which base dropping down, expecting a fight, and he knows there is one. Looking for it. The LG fight favors base again. And that's... Ooh, that missed rail. That second one would have been a kill shot given the circumstances. GaRpY on the back foot, though. If he did just pick up the armor, it's gone now. And I think that's going to be something base is more than aware of. It means, like, what are you going to pick up now, GaRpY? If I hit you with a rail at any point now with this next item about to spawn, I'm going in. And you probably will die. Lovely shot from GaRpY, though. I like that angle. That was so cute. Flea, that bonus bit of height to set up for a rail. I mean, it almost worked. That probably would have been play of the week, I reckon. Lovely shot.
And now GaRpY just finding himself on the receiving end of a lot of base momentum, but that's a bit of a misplay. Base just really wasn't expecting GaRpY to be able to adjust to that as quickly as it did, right? Good play in most situations, but when you're up against a ranger who can just orb straight onto you, Peeker can't keep up with the orb, so you can put yourself in really bad decisions right there.
That's really a moment where Strog says deploying anti-personnel drone, and Ranger just goes deploying anti-Strog orb, and he gets a nice little rail. It's going to be scary to survive.
No!
Yeah, the worst time to die. The worst time.
I think that was 0.1 second, maybe. Okay.
Deploying anti-Strog orb. I told you. GaRpY. I don't know how he keeps doing this, Flea. How can GaRpY?
Well. Yeah, absolutely. How can GaRpY pull this off time and time again? Nice little peeker to the face. And it's going to temporarily force GaRpY backwards. Oh no, base. He knew he messed up. The moment he heard GaRpY just pick up Mega as base was jumping into the room, he was just too slow to go for it. And GaRpY even steals away the heavy. This is an extremely solid comeback by the Brit.
And he's doing such a fantastic job of matching the fight whenever necessary. And the amount of damage he's getting, it feels like basically he's trying to secure these frags, and then out of nowhere, GaRpY, if there was a possibility of getting max damage every time, GaRpY's been getting it. But it is still only 7 frags. We haven't even hit the 5-minute warning, and it's 7 frags apiece here. On Ruins of all maps, you are not used to seeing this much of a back and forth. How is this going to go? Too hard to call right now. Base with the LG and the rail, it's all he's got, but it's all he's going to need for this fight. And with the generous rocket launcher drop from GaRpY means that we can go in towards Mega position, and we don't even have to change course to pick up a rocket. But wait, GaRpY with the reposition! Is he going to steal the Mega away? He will! Lovely orb placement there, Flea. GaRpY, he has been a tricky, tricky boy today.
He has, but it is still base keeping himself in the leads. Those rails, of course, making it difficult to hang on to it. Oh, base, now you're caught in a bad position. Can he get out? Takes 1 rail. Needs to do something with the peeker here. Oh, these rails. Base just keeps finding these beautiful shots as well. 1 more will do it. Or is he gonna go for the shoddy? How will he try to finish this?
Whoa!
Hello! That's a lot of orb damage we've seen this time, right? Usually, I feel like it's used more for repositioning than what we're seeing now, but GaRpY is all aggressive with it.
Oof! GaRpY's getting some rocket placements all the way into big damage, but base keeping the push true. It really feels like this map's gone on for longer, which is how many frags have happened? Like 6 minutes? It feels like we've had a lot more than that. GaRpY, this is not the position you want. Looks for a defensive rail. Rare footage of just a straight up old school telefrag right there.
You love to see it. This is only making things more difficult for GaRpY now. As base finally starting to establish a solid rotation. 10 seconds between the items. Mega first, then heavy. And GaRpY does pick up the rockets, his star weapon, as you've already pointed out, but he doesn't have much more. And I think the biggest problem was that GaRpY didn't have exact timing on Mega either, so he was just setting up, but really didn't have anything to stop base from just running in and taking it anyways.
An LG 1v1 that will favor base for another time, and once more. It's just been a classic fashion here, hasn't it, Flea? When an item spawns, GaRpY trying to put that orb forward, not able to get much this time round. And this is a rather critical moment for the British Bulldog, because now, 2.5 minutes left to go, we have a rather significant mountain to climb. And we don't have much time to be patient about it. This is the scary thing. Control, base is stacked up, but he takes out all of the armor already. The peeker. And that's going to be a free armor. Okay, the start. What I'm also worried about here, Flea, is that with 2 minutes on the clock and the fact that Strog is significantly faster than Ranger. Whoa!
That orb, though, just about the speed of light. But I think that one of the things you said towards the beginning definitely turned out to be true. The mobility is helping base keep a positional advantage in most of these fights, and that is what allows him to do more damage in many of these engagements and ultimately get the lead as well. Now GaRpY, 2 minutes for 3 frags, completely doable. But I like the play from base, really solid read, expecting GaRpY to just take up the bounce pad, and he's zoning him away from the mega health. And this is not good for GaRpY because he's likely to lose out on the Mega. He will. And he just can't afford to give his opponent that much wiggle room in such a critical stage of the game. And now basically just gonna rush in. Wrong weapon choice. I think LG shotgun would have guaranteed the frag right there. But Base probably was expecting GaRpY to just make a run for the teleporter.
Or at the very least, maybe go towards LG direction. Kind of looked like he had his angle set up on the left-hand side right as he goes through there. Another frag on the board. And this looking like a little bit too much. Yeah, this is pretty much a free frag, the way things are going. Does get a rocket launcher, but with only a starting weapon. He just needs to push in. There's not much Base needs to do, and this will be a done deal. Base walking away today with a 3-0 result over GaRpY. GaRpY did have to make him work for it, absolutely. It's just a shame that the 3-0 won't quite reflect how hard GaRpY fought.
That's always the case, isn't it? Very rarely are these 3-0s complete blowouts, the way that the score might suggest. GaRpY fought like a lion, like a bulldog even. And there were some glimpse of brilliance, some really close games. This could have absolutely been a 2-1 at the least. But overall, I think that Base was just more consistent. Even if GaRpY would have secured that second map, I do think that Base, no matter what, would have secured the overall victory. But GaRpY absolutely made him work for it. So well played to both of these players.
That map would have been a lot more one-sided if it wasn't for GaRpY's unbelievable combat skill. That's the crazy thing about that map to me. Because Base, he had the control, he had the items. He really was, I think, the one that was setting the pace of that entire map. But when those fights were breaking out, here comes GaRpY just pulling out all kinds of just ridiculous plays and orbs and damage and rockets, you know, and then some. It's the kind of thing that makes him surely very stressful to fight against, because his use of the orb heal was like, look at how many orbs he got. Just fantastic stuff. But without them, I kind of feel that that would have been a lot more advantageous for Base.
Absolutely. I think the orb was just obscenely powerful. I wish we could see exactly how much damage GaRpY did with the orb alone. But I think it is more than what you tend to see from even the best Rangers, right? That was really the one thing that kept this a competitive match. But ultimately, Base, I mean, you can see it here, did slightly less damage than GaRpY, but his control of the items was better. And of course, the stroke, the crouch sliding, the mobility, and the speed helped him just get a positional advantage in most of these fights. And GaRpY fought really hard to break that advantage, but ultimately just wasn't able to.
Right. That now means that our first 4 series, they're done. Fantastic stuff. We all had a great time. But now, featured matchups are about to begin. Our first is going to be none other than 2 legends going head-to-head. We saw it last stage. We're seeing it again. Cypher versus Cooler is going to be our first featured matchup of the day. We'll be joined by DJ Wheat in a few minutes' time. We'll be right back with more Quake. You don't want to miss it.